Good morning, and thank you for joining us. My name is Phil Higgins, and we really appreciate you connecting with us here for this webinar with WakeCap, Renmark Consulting, and WirePass. Well, new technologies are now driving an increased degree of operational change within the construction sector. Many of these new technologies are already affecting the way we build, as many construction firms move forward with the digital or new tech adoption process. Well, these new technologies are supporting all aspects of the construction industry, including design, planning, procurement, and site execution. Well, in this webinar, we will be discussing real cases where WakeCap, Renmark Consulting, and WirePass have already proven value for more efficient site management, and how construction companies can today understand a more thorough, detailed analysis of job site activity. Well, joining us today is the CEO of Waycap Technology, Hassan Al-Balawi, and Daniel Pifko, the Vice President of the North American operations for WakeCap. Also joining us, we have the COO and Managing Partner for the North American region of Renmark Consulting, Charles or Chuck Renninghus, and the Senior Vice President for Ecosystems and Partners at WirePass, Mr. Yousef Kamel. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. Well, we will be doing everything that we possibly can to keep this webinar to 1 hour. We have a lot to cover in such a short period of time, but we will be keeping a few minutes for the end to answer any questions that you might have to ask the panel today. Anything about technology within the construction space and how WakeCap, Renmark Consulting, and WirePass can assist you. You'll find a button there on your profile to a Q&A button. So just click on there and type away a text message to us, and we will see that. Well, guys, thanks so much for joining us. So that we know who you are, why don't we just go around the room, and I'd appreciate if you could give a very brief introduction of yourself. And let's keep it a little bit personal, you know, where you went to school and what you're currently doing. And why don't you also tell us one thing that you love to do on the weekend? All right, so Hassan, why don't you kick off? Hassan Al-Balawi.
Thanks so much, Philip. My name is Hassan Al-Balawi, or in Arabic, Hassan Al-Balawi. I'm the CEO and co-founder of WakeCap. Basically, I come from academic background. My mother and my father have been like hoping that I come back to teach at some university. I did for 1 semester, and then I just got sucked into the most, I would say, challenging and entertaining challenges of getting technology to the site. That one thing I love to do in the weekend, believe it or not, I really like to dig into the data of basically the construction site, and just like really start with like brainstorming some ideas, crazy ones, and figuring out like some sort of breakthrough to come back to our customer next week and just, you know, thrill them with new use cases or, you know, actionable insights. And that's why I like to do what I do. I enjoy working in this kind of challenging environment, and I look forward to basically have the right partners, whether it's internally with WakeCap team or externally with our partner who have been like really helping us skipping a lot of I would say these challenges by sharing their knowledge, whether it's technical or domain knowledge. So thanks, Philip. I'm looking forward to this exciting webinar.
Well, just like any young entrepreneur, work, even on the weekends. What about you, Charles or Chuck? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm Charles Renninghus. I work for Renmark Consulting, an implementation consulting company. Originally, from a personal perspective, went to the University of Virginia, also University of Chicago, and then on to the American College of Education for an educational doctorate in change management. In addition to that, on the weekends, personally, ironically, we kind of follow Hassan's note there is we do spend a great deal of our time working over the weekends for our clients, mining data, reviewing projects, and helping our clients get to the end result. But outside of that, I spend a great deal of my time watching my son on the soccer pitch. He plays for the Olympic Development Program here in the States. So I get the weekends full of cheering and being the soccer dad, which is one of my favorite things to do.
I'm sure it's the only place in the world where they call a football field a soccer pitch. But thanks,
Yeah.
Charles. That's really good. And what about you, Mr. Daniel? What's the Daniel Pivko story?
So hi, everyone. So I'm Daniel Pivko. I grew up in Toronto, Canada, and went to engineering school just outside at University of Waterloo. Did some more, finished off my undergraduate, did some more engineering out on the west coast of Canada and in Victoria in mechanical engineering and image processing. Moved down to the Bay Area, to Silicon Valley just over 20 years ago. And have, for the most part, I've been in technology and business. I'd already started and sold 2 businesses before I left engineering school. And for the most part, I've stayed in technology that's mobile. So a lot of time in mobile phones, both in the fun side of it and games, some of it in industrial, a lot of it in industrial and enterprise, working with Ford Motor Company and several other large industrial plays to move things around, transportation, navigation. More recently, that means Internet of Things. So really understanding how multiple different IoT projects work and what are the Achilles heels to avoid in deploying large projects on industrial and enterprise grade. Personally, in my 1 workday a week, because I get to work with Dubai, or one weekend day per week, because I get to work with Dubai. It's a combination of, if it's a longer stretch, I really, really love to travel, love to see the world, preferably by motorcycle. I do a lot of motorcycling in and around the Bay Area, but just meeting different people and learning new recipes from them.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much. And Yousef, what about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Yousef Kamel, and thanks very much for inviting me to this great discussion. I'm based in Grenoble, France. So Grenoble is the Silicon Valley of Europe, but it's also in the middle of the Alps mountains. So anything to do with hiking, skiing, yeah, please feel free to come and visit us. This is really the area. So you bet that during our weekends, we're looking forward to getting some snow and going to ski. But apart from that, we also spend a fair amount of time working as well. So as being in the Silicon Valley, I spent most of my career in the silicon industry with ST Microelectronics, where I used to head systems engineering and business for mobile phone and smartphone business line. And I'm now heading the ecosystem and partners organization for WirePass, and WirePass being the supplier of the wireless technology used by WakeCap.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Yousef. Well, unlike you, I do like working hard, but I also like going fishing. So if you are in Dubai, give me a call. We'll go out and hit the seas. Well, it's great that you can join us today, and we want to quickly move through some of our discussion because we have so much to talk about. I want to hand over to Daniel right now. Daniel, maybe you could start off by just giving us a brief overview of what is WakeCap, the WakeCap system, and how is this being used today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm happy to. So I've got a little bit of show and tell here, and then I'll show you what it looks like on a job site. So at the cornerstone of what we do, or rather at the heart of what we do, is real-time location on a job site, primarily for people. And then we have a roadmap for looking at tools and equipment and machinery and other things down the road. For now, we handle people. And the way we do this is the cornerstone of the Waycap technology. We take a standard hard hat, we replace the ratchet on the back of it with a little piece that includes the battery, the electronics, and the antenna. And of course, it operates just as a ratchet as well to keep your hard hat tight. super light, super easy. The battery itself lasts about 1.5 years. It's just a small watch battery, a little bit thicker than a watch battery. Super easy to install in the first place, and to change it only takes a minute or two. The nice thing is that the weight of the hard hat is basically unaffected by the use of the attachment of this to the harness. We can deploy the hard hat, or we can take a harness and put it into an existing hard hat. The second piece of the puzzle is that we install a wireless mesh network on the job site. And with this, I'm going to share my screen so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. So we have these anchors, and I'm holding one here in my hand, and you can see one in the screen. It's a small device, battery operated, 2 standard D batteries, right? You put them on a wall. This particular one that I'm holding has magnets, snaps really nicely to an HVAC duct, if you've got those there. And by deploying those to a job site, it creates a wireless mesh network that does 2 main things. So first of all, it allows us to completely cover the site with communication. So I don't care if you're underground, if you're surrounded by metal, if you can't see a wireless tower, we do not depend on cellular coverage to each and every anchor. You put those around the job site, and it creates a network where the data is passed from the hard hat or from each anchor out through the other anchors out to the rest of the network. At the gateway between the internal network and the rest of the world is this device we call a gateway. You can see it on the top right on the image. And that's connected to any standard connection to the network. Ethernet cable, Wi-Fi, we can put a SIM card in there. We've recently done a private LTE connection, and that allows a direct connection to the rest of the world. That's the only piece of the puzzle that actually needs to be plugged in. We put it on a battery backup, so if there are outages on the network, we've got that covered. If there are internet outages, we've got it built into the system to store things so that you don't ever lose data. So that's kind of basically what the wireless mesh network does. It does communication. The other piece of the puzzle is that it gives you location of the worker. So we do the location based on measuring the strength of the signal at the hard hat to all of the anchors, whether it's 3, 4, 5, 10 of these wall-mounted devices around you, measures the signal strength, and it basically triangulates or multilaterates to get the location of where the hard hat is. And then it uses that to send the information out to the internet. Okay. The information it sends, primarily location and the timestamp associated with it. In the back of the hard hat, in the anchor, we have a motion sensor, which we can use to detect whether or not the person is moving around, whether it's been put down on the bench, perhaps when they should be wearing it, whether there's a fall, stuff like that. So that's the kind of information we send out. And then the wall-mounted devices also do environmental things like temperature and pressure and humidity and send that out. We've also found that there are several job sites and several areas of the job site where people aren't wearing hard hats, either in an office or on a large camp where there's a large project where there's a camp, or between the parking lot and the work area. And for those, we do have ID badges. These last about 1 year versus the 1.5 years on the anchor or on the hard hat, and 4 years on the battery. I didn't mention that. But it works on the same network. You just turn it on and you can attach that. You can put it on your hip. The nice thing about having this whole setup is that it's super easy to use. People don't forget their hard hats. If you don't have your hard hat, you're not working. If there's a temporary or short-term visitor to the job site, they can wear the hard hat, throw on a temporary hard hat, no problem at all. And also we can divide it up based on whether they're a worker or a vendor or a contractor or something like that. Super low power mesh network. I'll leave it to the other people to describe that and what's involved. Similar frequencies to Bluetooth, but more powerful. And again, it's 100% coverage of the site, no matter how it's built up or how it's changed. It's super easy to move these anchors around. On the job site, it looks kind of like this. We can attach the anchors to all sorts of different surfaces. We pull in the blueprint. We pull in the blueprint from the job site. We locate the anchors, put them in the software, and you're pretty much off and running. It's a very quick deployment. We actually draw regions or zones on the blueprint in our software, which is where you get to see the workers live in real time. You get to see various different things. We'll talk about all the data and how you can interpret that data later on. But ultimately, it's where are they on the site? What zone are they in? What floor are they on? Works equally well for large horizontal sites or for vertical sites. Where they are, where they're collected. We can group people by crew. We have work shifts. We can divide people up by what kind of skill set or trade they have. But that's fundamentally what we have and what the solution does. We have the ability to divide zones up into productive and indirect productive zones, so we can place you in each of these areas and start getting some advanced metrics and analytics out of things.
Now, Daniel, you talked about the wireless mesh network. Is this where WirePass fits into the discussion?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, we wanted a solution that was industrial grade, incredibly reliable, and that was WirePass.
Yousef, why don't you give us a bit of an overview of who WirePass is? What do you do? And how have you contributed to this technology with WakeCap?
Yeah, with pleasure. So basically, WirePass is a Finnish company, and you may know that Finland has been one of the leaders in radio and connectivity technologies in the world, who were the first to introduce GSM and mobile phone technology in general. So WirePass has inherited from that expertise, and our team has been focusing in really Internet of Things connectivity. So how to connect as many devices as possible within job sites, within industrial environments, within lighting and building environments, and how to make sure that connectivity is super reliable and works in a very harsh environment, right? So that's typically what we do. So we have developed this mesh network, which allows devices to connect to each other. These are actually clever devices. There is an embedded AI system in the nodes themselves, and the nodes actually discover their environment and find their way to through their neighbors, and neighbor to neighbor, the data arrives to the gateway. Then the data is able to be connected or collected in the servers or in the internet. So that's typically what we do. And so basically our technology resides on those small devices that were shown by Daniel. And this allows really very reliable, large scale connectivity that runs at very low power, and the data collection is super reliable.
I understand that WirePass holds the record for the largest mesh network or something like this. I read in my research.
That's right. Thanks for mentioning. Yes, we have effectively the world record for the number of devices connected in a single mesh network in the world. And this is a deployment in Norway where we have 700,000 smart meters connected all together in a single network. 700,000 devices.
Wow. In what industry is this?
So this is in metering, actually, smart metering, and the whole city of Oslo in Norway is actually connected with WirePass technology. So you have devices connected from home to home, then one of the devices out of 500 or 1,000 is connected to the internet and shares its connectivity to the rest of the system.
Wow. Well, so I could get all my neighbors connected and we can only have to pay for one internet connection?
That's absolutely true.
Always looking for a good solution there. Chuck, let's go over to you. I understand that Renwire is very much involved with consulting to support change management within the construction industry. And this is a backbone of what our discussion is today. Could you just explain a little bit of what Renwire is doing today? But more importantly, if you could help us understand some of the operational concerns that the construction industry is facing today, concerns that may be just limiting the opportunity for efficiency or inefficiencies that are adding cost to the construction process.
Yeah. So Renmark Consulting is an implementation consulting company. We specialize in transformation and change management at the point of execution. So With the technologies like WirePass and WakeCap, we're able to take the big data and work with our clients to generate, in this particular instance or instances like it, management control systems that allow them to actively manage the work content, intervene and defect eliminate where the issues are at the point of execution. So these are all the things that are limiting productivity, on-time delivery, and these are the concerns in the industry at the moment: on-time delivery of work content, contractor management, and cost structures. So for instance, in the US, we're seeing a flattening of productivity in the construction industry, as well as an inflation of cost due to skilled labor being at a lower availability. So these types of technologies have combined with our management control systems and our ability to interface at the point of execution, as well as in the planning functions, to deliver a true management system that allows them to see real live data at the intervals that they need in order to affect change at the point in the job site. So in addition to that, the industry itself, specifically in North America, continues to build and grow. But as I mentioned before, labor is a concern. Material costs are a concern. There's waste in the logistics process of moving materials from one place to the other. Contractor management is another source of significant improvement where opportunities lie. And what this technology does is allows us the greater visibility and transparency to where work is actually being executed and how to improve that execution.
Thank you. Hassan, our webinar today is all about from data to insight. And I know that you are very much involved with your clients and supporting them in efficiency improvement. I guess that's something that you probably just do on the weekend as your hobby. But what are some of these insights that Chuck's talking about and that your system provides? How is it that WakeCap is adding benefit to the construction site management? We collect all of this data, but then, I mean, how do we go to that next level?
Yeah, sure. I mean, this is exactly what we are all trying to do. And there is like a little background story here. So when we first started WakeCap to figure out how to make it work, and it was all about, I want to come to the construction management and say, okay, so look at this. You can actually see what everyone is. And we end up with what they called it or described it, the so what problem. Okay, you're showing me what everyone is, so what? So they're like basically being bombarded with so much data, but it's not, actionable. It's basically summarized as the so what problem. Now, this is where actually we got to start to think about how can we actually transfer this data to information, and then also to action moving forward. And that process, I enjoy it so much because it just allow you as a technology provider to communicate with different users, different stakeholders. And let me, for example, summarize some of the use cases that we found and applicable in almost any site. When it comes to construction, one of the biggest challenges that they have is basically automating, for example, manual logistics, like attendance, like, figuring out how many hours being delivered on the site. This is done manually from a timekeeping perspective. And therefore, when labor productivity depend on the time spent on the site, it have a direct effect in the cost. And of course, then we can see that it actually have effect in the plan and everything else. So we started there. We said, okay, how about that? Let's start with something as simple as, can we get a comparison between expected hours and actual hours delivered on the site? And then we go one step further. How many of those actual hours were delivered safely on the site? Meaning people were wearing the hard hat on the site. And then we go even deeper and say, out of all these hours, how many were spent on assigned zone? And what we mean by assigned zone, we integrate with with WBS, which is basically work packages or different activity, just to see who was allocated where, and then we basically show the percentage of hours spent on the assigned area. All that to say, we come at the end of the week, sit with the management, show them some of the insights of why people are not delivering enough hours on that day. You lost a lot of hours or a lot of productive hours because people, because that hoist went down for maintenance for a few days that week. All of this made us basically what we call it as more like a problem finder, or like, let the management focus on some of those problems. And we all know the construction management usually are really bombardited with so many inputs, so many things moving, and they need to really just indicator to highlight a potential issue that could be that need to be addressed before it actually increased. That's some of the use cases that we see on the site.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Chuck, I want to go over to you, because from my experience, or from your experience, are contractors ready to introduce some of the change management that you are working with? And I mean, if Waycap has this ability to identify real-time data on the site for all the activity and identify both the efficiencies and the inefficiencies on the site, is the industry ready to accept the facts and implement this degree of change? Now, I don't just make up this question. It comes from my own experience. I happen to be a third-generation contractor. In my early career, I worked in my parents' construction company that was founded by my grandfather. And I can tell you that it was so difficult for my father to accept change. He'd always done it this way. And, to introduce some new change was a difficult process. Now, I'm talking early days digitalization, right? I'm talking 35 years ago, when we were buying our first computer, when we were buying our first fax machine. Does anyone have a fax anymore? When we bought our first mobile phones, these were the technologies that were coming to the construction industry then, and it was difficult to accept. We've come so far since then, and now we're talking about Waycap systems and all of this other digitization. Is the industry accepting this change?
Well, I think that candidly, I think they're ready for it. Sometimes they can articulate what they want, but they can't articulate what they need, right? So for instance, organizations are looking, they all will say they want to control costs. They want to get labor productivity. They want to make sure that their on-time delivery is narrowing, their overruns don't happen or aren't as large, that the material costs and the logistics costs of getting things where it needs to be are all common concerns, right? And they can articulate that. What they've been having trouble with on the digital space is articulating the how, right? How does that happen? So in this particular instance, when we're talking about WakeCap, right? We've implemented this with them in a number of different locations. And what this then, as soon as the client starts to see the underpinning technology, the fact that underpinning big data technology can allow them to then parse this down into usable bytes, right? So it has to be usable to the end user. So what we've been able to do is work with the partners and the client, most importantly, to help them articulate what the need is at the point of execution. So what does the supervisor of area X need in order to actively manage their area? In addition to that, then broaden that out, not just area X, but area X, Y, and Z, right? So what does the area manager need to manage it? And then conversely, the contractors coming on site for staging and safety protocols, and then their execution of work. It's around how do we actively manage the hours that the subcontractors are using on site. So these common problems always are arising. The most important part of this is about simplicity, taking these large pieces of information about where people are working, matching them with estimated versus actual hours, but that's almost mechanical. We have to serve that content up to the end user, to the manager, in a very usable, tangible way at the right interval. And that's what we've focused on in this partnership, is serving that content up to enable active management, right? This is intervention at the point of execution at the right time, place, right? We also, when things go wrong on a defect elimination basis, provide the management systems to allow the manager to relocate staff or reassign staff, right? So if you lose if something goes down and a crane goes down and you lose a week, you could lose a week, right? If it goes down and you allocate the staff within a day, you lose a day. So if we can reallocate the staff within an hour, we're now making those incremental building blocks, that enabling that decision making to improve the business 1 hour at a time, if you think about it, right? In their daily.
So WakeCap talk about their system being real time. This is something that you see as a necessity today in the process?
Well, I see the data collection is real time. I think that there's intervals, as we mentioned, the people working at the point of execution with the constrained resources are often overwhelmed. So what we've done is worked with them, create the overarching meeting cadence. So structuring the meeting cadences so that we have our toolbox meetings, our daily review meetings, our shift review meetings, things of that nature that already exist in the normal way of working, right? To make them more effective, to provide that underpinning data so they can make active decisions during the day.
Overarching
the other thing, if I may, the other thing which is very important is that the hardware itself, because there is a need for hardware, right? You need some sensors to be there, right? Those need to be seamlessly installed. The installation of the system, hardware system, needs to be almost transparent to the operation of the site. And also the fact that you don't need to run any wires or wear a specific device to be able to acquire all this interesting data is also super important. And this is what WakeCap really managed to do. They managed, of course, together with our partnership, we managed together to have a system which is super simple to deploy on the site and that does not interact with the operation of the site.
Right.
Well,
and
you talk about the construction side. Construction sites are very heavy industrial, lots of activity, lots of stuff going on in a construction zone. Is the network secure or suitable for this, or suited to this heavy industrial application?
Yeah, that's exactly what we have tailored our wireless system to achieve, basically because you don't need any type of infrastructure, and because the connectivity is done from device to device. There's always a device in the neighborhood, and if that device which is close by has an obstacle in between, the devices will reroute the data automatically, and this is what makes the reliability of the system. And of course, all the data is totally encrypted within the network, so the security of the data and the safety of the data is ensured.
So as WakeCap continues, as the client continues to build the building, what do you, is this network simply expanded in the building structure?
Yeah, absolutely. There's absolutely nothing, no specific infrastructure to install. There are those small devices that you put on the walls. Anyone in the job site is able to just plug them or put them on the wall, and then the network can scale really indefinitely.
Let me stay with you for one thing, because one of the questions that comes to my mind is, how safe and secure is this network? If I'm working on a construction site and I've got this network of electronics all around me and I'm wearing a sensor on the back of my helmet, I mean, is this a concern, or is there a safety element? How does this compare with other technologies that we are experienced with today?
Yeah, no, this is totally safe. We're using the Bluetooth radio, right? So this is exactly the same frequency, radio frequency, but we use it at a much lower power, and also we use it much at lower frequency. So if you compare this with a Bluetooth headset, for example, a full day of WirePass operation corresponds to a few minutes of a headset usage. So it's really totally safe.
So if I had my iPhone pods in, just for a few minutes, this is equivalent to what I'd be experiencing on a day on the site.
On a full day, absolutely.
And Philip,
let me hook over to, sorry, question there.
That this is just really important that that people understand that technology. As we all know, the construction sites are very harsh environments, and oftentimes in other parts of the world, not just in North America, they're quite remote, right? So this technology, what I find exciting about this technology, not just in the North American market, but in the broader one, is that this level of connectivity allows us to reach further into difficult and austere construction environments. And most importantly, convert from the actual construction into the operation. This is another thing that we also need to make sure that we keep in mind of when this type of infrastructure is installed, going forward as the construction is complete. This can also be used for ongoing operations in, let's say, refineries and things of that nature after they're constructed, so that they can manage the maintenance processes. So there's just a natural migration from construction to operation that's also available with this technology.
And the durability of this hardware, Hassan, I know you're in Saudi Arabia, you have deployments all around the Middle East region. I mean, does the extreme temperatures cause a problem? Does extreme cold cause an issue?
That's a very good question. I mean, we all talked about, you know, the harsh environment. I mean, the basic challenges on the field can be summarized from three factors. You have the site itself being very dynamic, being very harsh, being like, you know, at different kinds of temperatures. And then you have also the end users, the end users, we're talking about the workers themselves. Those are the basically, although they might not be involved in the decision of bringing WakeCap in, but they could kill the product because they are at the end of the day, the end user. So we had to really address their concerns in terms of, you know, do I need to really worry about the device? Do I need to charge it? Do I need to actually even switch it on and off? And also, do I need to worry about this device tracking me off the site? All of these concerns need to be addressed, and with WirePass, we were able to really overcome these major challenges, having basically a very reliable network that handled the dynamic nature of the site. And then you have a local mesh network that only works and tracks people within the job site. So when you leave the site, we don't actually have a way, we don't even have a GPS on site. So all these concerns being addressed from different perspective, technical, user experience. And of course, the third factor that I didn't mention is the smartphones. Smartphones either is usually not a reliable source in a construction site for many reasons, all the way from, you know, no coverage to the point where there are some sites like oil and gas where they don't allow smartphones on the site. And having such a solution allow us to really overcome these challenges. Back to your question, Philip, about the temperature. I mean, we started working in the hottest, I would say, area kind of in the on the world, and we have been there for almost two years. The beauty of the anchors we place on the site, it's not about just to provide connectivity and position, but they also monitor the environment as well. So when we look at the safety manager, like they are mandated to require, I mean, they to collect a daily reading from different regions of the site. We collect this reading every 5 minutes. And they have like a full, I mean, you know, an active reading coming in that measure the temperature, the humidity, and also the air pressure, allowing them to really build a heat index, a live heat index that would make the job site even safer. There are also other use cases that we didn't tap into that we are really excited about. Like, for example, equipment and tools. Now you have these smart tools that works like seamlessly but you need a phone to connect the data to get it there. I mean, thanks to WirePass, they have been investing a lot of their effort to open the mesh network to other spectrum, like the Bluetooth, to actually utilize the existing infrastructure to track equipment and tools without any additional hardware. So all of those use cases enable us to work with tool provider, equipment, material tracking. So I think we're like really at the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the use cases. Yeah.
We're seeing a lot of construction companies move forward with this process of digitization. Over the last couple of years, I've heard a lot of comment that the construction industry is behind in the process, that they have not moved forward with digitization in the construction practice. I don't really agree with that statement, because I know that construction companies have always been adopting digitalization to some degree. Maybe it's not the same as the rest of other industries. I mentioned before, 35 years ago, my parents' company bought a new computer. That's digitalization, correct? We bought mobile phones, digitalization. We had a fax machine. But the construction industry has rapidly continued to move forward in this area of new tech, very interesting new tech, and especially in the last couple of years. Daniel, what's your explanation? I know you don't like the word, but I do. Digitalization. You prefer new tech, right? What does this really mean to the industry? What are we looking at here? And are we just simply adding more costs to the manufacturing process? Is this technology bringing efficiency?
Yeah, so the reason that I don't like the word digitization is it sounds like this is some geeky bench project to just try out some new technology. What we really need to understand is this is bringing real incremental value for the supervisors, the contractors, the people who are in charge of delivering the site on budget, on time, with minimal headache, right? And so what we really need to look at, it's not just digitization because, hey, look, we brought computers on the site. It's if we can, so we had with B6, we had a situation where there were people waiting for hoists on like the 5th floor, the 8th floor, a bunch of other things. Everybody has a hoist story where there's some inefficiency associated with it. We were in the daily reports where we were sitting down with the supervisors, the site supervisors, the foremen, able to say, hey, look, there's 180 work hours of people just sitting here waiting for the elevator, right? That's a hard cost and it's gone, right? Where we've got things where people are waiting to get into a job site because they've got a badge in, that's gone. We've got other things where we're starting to measure with like the quality measures, the quality metrics that Renmark is bringing. It's a matter of, you can see how the site can be improved and have a scorecard automatically collected. All that mundane collection of data with clipboards is gone. It's all automated right now. So you can improve the flow of the job site, with the result being, right, that your project is going to come in costing substantially less than it would without the WakeCap system. Unless you have this kind of automated data collection and you're on the construction site, you are losing money every single day. Every day you don't have this automatic collection, you're getting further behind your competitors. You're losing your ability to compete with other contractors going for the fewer contracts that are out there because of COVID or otherwise. You are losing ground against your competitors. And we see a lot of companies folding in the Middle East, and it's starting to get some pressures here, right? You've got to increase your efficiency. You have to do it or you're going to be out of business. And so it's not about the technology. There's someone, Shadrach asked in the questions, they talked about the amount of money spent effectively on technology. That's not the point. The point is, if I can save you 180 hours per day, work hour, like what person hours if someone's waiting for an elevator, that's where we make the money back for you. We'll take a small chunk of that. Our ROI is fantastic. We can talk about pricing another time, but it's about the benefit in time and cost and all that kind of stuff. And that's why you have to implement something like this, even if it's just a pilot right now.
That's a very big call there, Mr. Daniel. The one thing that I've learned from the American elections and COVID-19 this year is to check the facts. And so I want to check fact you. I'm going to ask Mr. Charles Renier, is what Daniel saying correct? You're the consultant. You've been on site. I know you've worked with WakeCap on some projects. Is the WakeCap system providing the solution for this efficiency improvement? And what are we talking about here? Are we talking 1 or 2%? I mean, that might fall in the category of so what, like Hassan said before. But what is some of that inefficiency that we see on construction sites today?
Yeah, so I would say that, I kind of go back to your comment about digitization, right? The data and the content here provided by the technology is really an enabler, right? And what Daniel was talking about is taking that enabler of all this data and information and making it usable. And so from a Renmark perspective, once you break that down and serve it up to the managers who typically didn't have transparency to that information and leveraging their expertise. So now we're getting into the change management. We start to leverage the knowledge and expertise of the people at the point of execution by providing them the content that they're asking for to actively make decisions, right? Then those decisions start to get made. And once those decisions are starting to be made, that's when you start to save money, right? That's when you save costs. That's when you reallocate people. That's when material, you can compress the work to time relationship, right? So what we're seeing is that in construction specifically, when we implement this with our partners here, we're seeing in some cases 40% productivity improvement in some regions of the world. And in North America, we're seeing somewhere around 15 to 20% productivity improvement, right? And it doesn't mean people are working harder. So don't get me wrong there. This is about working smarter, right? This is, as Daniel was mentioning, there's lots of stopping points. If you were to look at the average day, you would see where's all the lost time, where's all the waste. Well, the transparency that this technology allows us to have allows us to identify the waste and do something about it. We can restructure the work. We can replan the work. We can make sure that our work packs are 100% complete. So this data allows us to go back up into the core processes and kind of walk that back through to create that ongoing efficiency. Most importantly, however, as I mentioned before, this is about people, because people have been handicapped in many ways, right, by not having this level of transparency and data. So they're making decisions which may or may not be right based on their historical experience, right? But sometimes this data is actually pointing them in another direction and allowing that experience to be leveraged and to really take the cost out. Right. And those are the management system tools that Hassan was talking about that we've worked hand in hand to develop to provide that to the point of execution, coach and train those individuals to actively make those decisions and change the way they work. Right. And then go back and revert back to the data and verify, right? The old trust but verify. Trust that we're making the improvement, but then ultimately we verify that through measurable hardline benefits, whether it be plan actual variance, right, of work hours, or whether it be on-time delivery, et cetera. So all of that's measurable.
So the fact is, as Daniel has said, so he's off the hook, right? So
he's off the hook completely.
He's off the hook. Very good. Okay. Well, guys, you know, we are coming. We have about 10, 12 minutes before we want to close. Please, if you have any questions, then hit that Q&A button and send us a question. We already do have a few questions that were sent in prior to the webinar, which I'd like to find some time to get to. But I have one very important question, and that is that WakeCap is now being deployed on many sites throughout the world. And you have, you know, worked closely with your clients and you've collected all of this data. Can we talk about some of the insights that WakeCap has been able to provide to the industry so far and already? Are these insights actionable? Has your client taken this data, developed an understanding, the insight, and executed change? Hassan, why don't you talk? Do you have some specific examples that you might want to bring?
I always like to tie things back to, for example, what they call it. I always refer to Renmark as basically the consultant who actually set what they call the right metrics that we can compare. So for example, one of the metric that was introduced by Renior, it's like the efficiency ratio. How many hours people are spending working, how many hours they spending not working, and how many hours they spend basically not in the right zone. So these like efficiency ratio give you an idea, like what do you expect your workforce in general to spend on the working area, the active direct working area, versus the logistic versus the non-working area, for example. That is like one metrics that we're able to see that companies start roughly around 60%, like give or take, some actually less than 60%, maybe even 40%. I'm talking about 40% of their time is the only, like 40% of the total time spent on a direct working area. And that is really low. And just showing these results in an active manner, as Chuck mentioned, leveraging the experience of the construction managers, it makes it really easy for them. They know how to solve these kind of issues. So that when we show them that a lot of hours are being spent on the attendance, so staggering the time, automating attendance, utilizing these kind of values, allow them to easily take care of those issues as long as you're showing them. And then moving within within a couple of weeks from 60% to hitting 80 or even 90%. That's one metric. Another metric that we're also looking for is how many hours are not delivered. So what do we mean here? You go to a site, you basically look at how many hours being claimed, either by the manual, by the timekeeper, or by basically being reported from the foreman, just basically the hour that make it to the payroll, whether it's the typical hours or including the overtime hours. And then we start comparing, like how many actual hours delivered versus being claimed. And the first thing we notice, will be like a difference about 20%. Depending on the site, sometimes even like the average we noticed at the beginning of the site, it's about 20%. Now, what can we do to help reduce this discrepancy? We have been now helping our client to reach less than 1.5%. In fact, they are challenging themselves to reach less than 0.5% of undelivered hours. Now, how can we actually get to that? First, more accurate reporting. If I only worked 6 hours, if I claimed 10 hours, guess what's gonna happen? It will show up. The 4-hour difference will show up. So now more accurate reporting going to the system. Another thing is basically the hours that we highlighting this value, highlighting this discrepancy to different stakeholders, all the way from the management down to the worker, including the subcontractors who might not be, involved a lot with the productivity, like in a lump sum deal or something. They are interested because they are the one who's basically care about the productivity of and efficiency of their own work. So these kind of metrics, the only thing I want to conclude with, technology, it's not the challenge. The challenge in construction site is adding a value for every stakeholder on the site, whether you are a subcontractor or a project director or even a foreman, down even to the labor. Having those, in your site, adding value to them is really, really important. And it's what actually makes us successful in implementation and getting the value faster than ever.
Chuck, you have any comments on this? Is what Hassan's saying relevant to you? You're dealing at the coalface with these clients. Are these the concerns that they're faced with today?
Absolutely, he's spot on. What we've been seeing in the collective construction space is really the technology is the enabler, right? But most importantly, we're starting to see that there's significant pockets where this tool has allowed even us, as consultants, to have greater visibility to the pockets of productivity improvement. And many of the pockets come from unexpected locations, right? So for instance, planning and scheduling. By leveraging the plan actual hours, we're able to then take that variance that Hassan's talking about. Maybe they plan 10 hours just using that as a rough number, 10 hours, but it took 6, right? The next time they plan an activity similar to that, right? A new standard is set. So then the next time they plan it, it's at 6. Or maybe it took 10 hours, but it took 3 people instead of 4, right? So all of that content is iterative, right? So the data is being collected, analyzed, actioned at the point of execution, but then recycled back into the planning process for the next cycle. Now, what that means for subcontractors, et cetera, is we can continually refine the cost, the bidding process, and all of that type of stuff as well. So it's not just execution in this specific instance on this specific site, right? We can then start to use big data to say, when we do this specific activity, it takes this amount of time with this many people, right? Which then allows us to do more accurate planning for the next cycle and continue to compress that work to time relationship.
Chuck, I could have used you about 30 years ago to talk to my father. I'm sure he would have moved forward much faster if you had a chance to talk with him. Thank you so much. It's really good to hear that that professional voice about this area of change management. No, I do joke about my father. He did adopt the process eventually. So good. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Look, guys, we have quite a few questions. I know we've covered a lot. I think we've addressed the concern. What do we do with this insight? You know, we collect the data, we identify the insight, we develop the solution. And a solution can only be founded once we have all the facts. And I think that that's the element of the data. And thank you, Hassan, for working all of those weekends to bring us all of that WakeCap data. It's fantastic. But we do have a few questions. The first one that I have here is that, is WakeCap suitable for hazardous locations? Hassan, very quick answers. We'll get through as many of these questions as we can.
All of our devices are ATEX certified for both class 2, class 1. It's already been deployed in an oil and gas industry where it's hazardous even to have phones. So yes.
Yousef, a question here for you. Is this suitable for an underground experience in a mine, deep underground? Is this?
Yes, definitely. The solution is actually deployed in multiple construction sites, including mining. And yeah, this is absolutely suitable. As I said, there's no need for a cellular connection with WirePass.
Okay, here's another question. Daniel, you might want to take this one. This is a real question. Have you received feedback from actual workers in the field? How do they respond to the technology, and do they make it more efficient versus how does the employee respond to this monitoring technology?
Yeah, so first off, part of it is overall, we respect the workers' rights, we respect the workers' abilities. One of my grandfathers was a labor union organizer, one was a business owner, and so I've got kind of both of them talking in my ear at the same time. How we've implemented that, part of the reason we chose WirePass is that it only does your location while you're on the job site. These guys have mentioned that before. So when you're on the way home, that's your time. We have no right to that. With some of the GPS alternatives that are out there, you can find out afterwards where people were. And we just don't have that ability. So by virtue of and there's lots of other things that ultimately turn into respect for the worker and what's a reasonable request. It's reasonable for me to say, when did you arrive? When did you leave? How much time did you spend in the area that was allocated for your crew, for your work package or your lean task or whatever method we're going with? You know, how much, that's a reasonable request. And as long as you demonstrate that responsibility, then the workers accept it a lot better. And this is clearly the way things are going to make the job and the company more competitive.
There's some very sinister questions here. The next question I have for you is, what if I'm on the construction site and I'm a worker and I take off the sensor and I put it onto somebody else's helmet so that they think that I'm actually working, but now I'm having a sleep or having a smoke or whatever you do when you're not working? Hassan, you want to answer this one?
Yeah, it's simple because this is why we didn't design it as an accessory. We designed it as a major part of the hard hat. If you take it off, you cannot wear your hard hat simply. That's one. Second, it's tagging it to another hard hat won't work. So it's basically physically won't work. And lastly, it's all about, it's not about just policing that bad apple that basically trying to oversmart the system. It's we designed it in such a way that you can basically, if you don't show any signs like of movement, it won't show up as an active helmet. If it goes offline, it will show up as an offline. So that's the beauty of an IoT. It needs to always be working in order to justify that, you know, your presence on the site. And one last comment about your previous question about the workers. One of the interesting things that we didn't expect here in the region, that there is a need for the worker to actually vet their hours in order to get paid. And there are like some bullying happening in this industry, at least from what we heard. And what I mean here is some workers are suffering, you know, from some of the the foreman or the timekeeper who are not going to give them the full hours. And when they started seeing WakeCap, he's like, okay, this is my proof that I actually worked 10 hours that day. Do I still need to vet my hours? And this is where we realize, well, no, you don't need to vet your hours. Your hours are being collected automatically. So they start wearing it just to prove that, well, I'm a good apple. I'm actually working, if, you know, and this is my report and I'm happy with it. So those are like some of the perspective of some of the workers that we have been talking with.
Well, I also think there's a secondary portion of this that we've seen. So by wearing the hat, right, and having a reasonable request for data, we actually start, the managers and supervisors and foremen, et cetera, start to solve real issues that are happening in the field. Many of the people at the point of execution want to come to work. They want to do a good job. They want to have the right materials in the right place to execute work in the right way. Right. So what they started to realize or start to realize is that when something does go wrong, action is taken more quickly to resolve it. So the defect elimination allows them to do what they like to do most, which is actually complete the work. Right. So I think there's also often people get, you know, concerned about the data side, but on the personal change management side, once people start to see the benefit and the action and the activity taking place that makes their lives easier, then they become proponents and advocates for the system and the technology as well.
So it's more about the good than the bad. We're looking to contribute to a better process.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, there's so many good questions. I know we're at the 1 hour mark. Let's take a few more minutes. Let's have a look at this. One question: how accurate is the Waycap system? How accurate on site is this?
Yeah, I can take that one really quickly. So when we talk about accuracy, we have to define what kind of data we collect to say what accurate. So we collect what? Time, location, and motion. So when it comes to time, hours spent on the site, we're really accurate to the point where even if for the worst case scenario, if the mesh network stop functioning, which is really rare, we never had that issue. But let's say you are in a blind spot. For some reason, somebody came in and just, you know, broke all the anchors there. Worst case scenario, we still have the backup of figuring out how many hours you spend there on this blind spot to ensure that you have the full hours that you spent on the site. That's when it comes to time. So from a time perspective, we're pretty accurate. When it comes to motion, like whether you are wearing the hard hat or not, active or not active, we are also really, really accurate. We have been tested in different kinds of environment, like, you know, when a steel fixer doesn't do a lot of movement, sitting all day just, you know, fixing steel, can we actually detect him as an active? And the answer is yes. That's how accurate we are when it comes to the motion. Now, when it comes to the location, it depends on the zone. So we can be as accurate as the zone that we deployed at. So if you have, let's say, a big open area, and this open area, you consider it as one zone, then we won't need to deploy a lot of anchors on the site, because the accuracy you will be looking for is a zone-based accuracy. Now, the actual accuracy can go as low as 2 meters, which is about 2 yards. That can be achieved by having more additional anchors on the site. Like, for example, if you want a room level accuracy, then we will be deploying more anchor than if you want let's say a floor or apartment level accuracy.
Okay. Daniel, I'm just reading a question here. We have another question. I'll get back to this one. But one question here, what is the future development plan for WakeCap? Daniel, do you want to answer this one?
Yeah, everyone here is going to have to sign an NDA, and then we'll tell you all of our secrets. No, I mean, we've already said that once we get this wonderful network installed on the construction site, there's a lot of different things that you can do with it. We think that working with people and understanding where people are moving around the job site and how people are moving around was the largest unaddressed problem, and so that's where we started. But once you get that in place, and once you get the network in place, then you start to think, how else can we use the network on the site? The immediate next one is large machinery, forklifts, backhoes, like things that kind of move around the site, getting down into tools, and attaching small tools, hand tools, power tools onto the same network. You can then start to get interactions between the people and the tools. So if I've got a device, so all of our devices now have NFC built in. So I would be able to actually like tap in to a particular device or a forklift, and that would allow me access to the area, or maybe it would check my permission. So maybe there's another company that offers a list of certifications that a worker has. And if they're authorized to drive the forklift, they can do that. So those are immediate next steps that we can do. But generally speaking, we're about making the job site work better, whether it gets down to the materials level, to anything that moves on the network. We could potentially go into, like in a more distant future, other ways we could use the network in the earlier part of the process, or after the project is completed. Maybe there's some interesting things we can do to leave the network in place or to do something with the network. And then once we have the data, like once we understand, like we've got the equipment, we've got the core data that is now believable and reliable and has all the people in it, and then the insights, then you can start to look at not just the hardware and the technology, but all right, so what else can we learn about what we did on this last job site so that we can improve for the next time out? And so that the Chuck can go out and say, all right, let's go back and look at this. Let's sit down and bounce around different ideas based on the actual data we collected and make our job sites in the future work better. That's definitely something that we'd love to get going and is extremely viable.
Very good. Guys, maybe this is a good question for Charles to answer, but in the past few years, we've heard a lot about this adoption of technologies, and unfortunately this year we have been faced with COVID-19. And this has slowed many economies in many industries. Fortunately, all around the world, the construction industry still continued. There were most construction sites continued to build. I know of some regions that did close, but here in the Middle East, construction activity remained. And I know it's been difficult in the US and in Europe in some locations. But has the COVID-19 pandemic hindered to some degree the construction companies' adoption of new technologies, or has it accelerated their interest to these technologies?
Yeah, I think that the answer to that is definitely accelerated interest in the technology. The different business conditions around cost inflation, as well as availability specifically here in North America to the appropriate skilled labor, right, is an issue, right? So that drives costs. So as you drive costs and compete for more jobs, this type of technology allows the bidding organization, even the general contractor, right, to really go after that work, know that they can do it, and they can do it with fewer people and still arrive on time, on budget. So the technology enablement is probably going to only accelerate from this point forward. One of the areas that we see that is specifically in, let's say, as Daniel was mentioning, turnarounds. Right, turnarounds in big facilities. This tool allows organizations to look at previous execution of a turnaround by individual piece of equipment. So by zone, as Hassan mentioned, right? So how many hours did we expend here and did we get the result we were looking for? So as a result, you can now say, okay, I want to be in, let's say, a Solomon quadrant of the first quadrant of Solomon, best in class. Right? I can use this technology to monitor the activity of the turnaround, and then I can review that and say, how many hours does it take? So the next time I have to do it, I contain my costs, and then you get the multiple of uptime. right? So there's a major opportunity associated with this type of technology, not only in the construction space, but everywhere. And it's only going to accelerate from here.
Yousef, you're associated to other industries and the adoption of technology. Is this the same? Are you seeing the same in other industries?
Yeah, it's kind of the really the start of a journey where actually industries like smart buildings, smart lighting, asset tracking all over the place, not only for construction but also for logistics and supply chain. All of the industrial process for predictive maintenance, smart metering and energy, all of these industries that we are deployed in, we're starting to see really a major need and major appeal for higher connectivity, higher level of digitization, better knowledge of what is happening on the job sites, etc. So this is definitely growing. Even though, of course, a lot of industries are suffering during this period.
And Daniel, is this the same in the US in your marketplace? Is it the buzz? People talking about this now?
Yeah, I mean, there are different aspects of it. I mean, we're certainly getting interest from a lot of different industries. That's sort of one area of interest in the technology. We're getting certainly construction. That's what this webinar is all about. But like manufacturing and oil and gas is one area of growth. We're constantly getting requests for how we could use the network in the smart building and the smart operations once whatever we're building is built. COVID, we're seeing as hopefully, knock on wood, more of a passing thing, where people were trying new technology solutions and reaching out for new technology. We do have some of that. We do have contact tracing. We can tell you an area in which someone has gone, and we will continue to do that. But I think there's a lot of knee-jerk purchases for things like devices that beep if you're within 6 feet of someone, that are ultimately wasted expenses because people are ignoring the alarms. If you hear it all day long, you're going to end up ignoring it. So there's lots of different areas where we're seeing this take up.
Very good, guys. Well, we have run out of time. I'd like to give the last word to Hassan. I have a very interesting question, because what I've learned today from this webinar is that Waycap provides a solution on site to deliver the building in more efficient manner, in less time, with more control, less lost hours as such. Is this how the Middle East sees your product today? I know you've deployed on many projects throughout the region there. Is this of great interest to your clients?
Yeah, sure. I mean, what I like about construction is that no matter where you go, the problem is the same. If you have a solution that can actually add value to the core problem, it will be applicable almost anywhere in the world. Just because construction's similarity in terms of the problem and the challenges that they are facing. We did decide to to start in the Middle East. Actually, we started at the beginning in Dubai for two main reasons. Because of the mega projects, and because Dubai is known for like basically taking risk in adopting new technologies. I was telling some of when people ask why we start in Dubai, because I was saying, well, if it didn't work in Dubai, it won't work anywhere else. But then we found that the construction is similar anywhere, and we started going to or taking that solution. I went to France, I went to the US, I went even to Mexico. And when we sat down and basically discussed the challenges, they're exactly the same. And that is what I like about construction. So by focusing on adding a value to a single project, guess what's going to happen? It's going to basically propagate to all the other sites. And that is something that I'm really proud to work with multiple partners, different contractors, different stakeholders, all the way to the real estate developers and the clients who are now basically coming back to us with additional use cases that was not on the scope, just because you have the data in hand.
Throughout the world, we've suffered this year economically, and I'm sure that this will have an effect on all industries, and that will include construction development. I don't think it would be, wrong to say that there will be less construction project activity next year, and just as many players within the construction space, which simply says to me, competition is going to be greater. Charles, I'm pretty sure from hearing you talk today, you'd agree that the future is one that will simply demand more efficiency on the construction site. And I think that with the Waycap system, what I've heard today, we have one solution that will bring home that efficient operations for the construction industry. Just as we close, if you all have any comment to make on that statement, then let's do that, and then we can wind up this webinar. Hassan, do you have anything to say with regard to that?
I would love just to thank everyone who made it to this webinar. I would like to thank Yousef from WirePass. I want to thank Chuck. I want to thank you, thank Daniel, for this great webinar. I really get excited in this kind of activity, which actually gonna make it a bit difficult to sleep, especially it's like 10 p.m. now, where I'm at. But no, I really look forward for such event. Please feel free to, for all the attendees, reach out to the questions. I really enjoyed answering the questions, which is one of the last one was like, oh, when are you going to come to South Africa? If it was up to me, I would have come yesterday. But hopefully soon. Thank you all.
Well, the next webinar, Hassan, we're going to have on a Friday because that's your day off. So the next webinar we will do on Friday. Charles, you have a comment to add?
Well, all I was going to say, echo Hassan's note of thanks to everyone. Thanks to you for hosting this. We appreciate it. We look forward to continuing these partnerships. I think that this is going to be a model going forward of how organizations work together and collaboratively to provide optimal solutions for their clients. And I think the work content that we've done collectively, just within this group, the companies represented, has been exemplary and generated huge results for its clients. And I look forward to continuing that. I really do.
Thank you so much, Charles. Thank you very much. Yousef?
Yeah, no, it's been a real pleasure participating, and thanks for inviting me. It's been a great pleasure working with WakeCap, and Hassan has been extremely good at converting what we are delivering into real value for the construction workers. And this is really a great pleasure to see that this system is working, being deployed, and being useful to the construction workers and their employers.
Thank you so much, Yousef. Thanks for joining us. Daniel, you have a final comment?
Yeah, I'm really excited to be at this, living and working at this time in the construction industry. It's difficult sometimes to realize how valuable something is going to be unless it's really been put in place. I think, 20, 30, 40 years ago, if you'd tried to explain having a mobile phone or an iPhone or an Android in our hands and convince people of that, you would have an uphill battle. And yet now, once people have had it and they've got all the apps and the connectivity and having that in their hands, try to pry it out of their hands now, and you'll recognize how far we've come. And in the construction industry, we're there now, right? As you start pulling this out, the lights are going to go on and people are going to say, oh yeah, I can't believe we've lived without this for so long. Why did it take us so long to put this out? We're there right here, right now.
Fantastic. Remind me to give you my father's telephone number so that you can sell Waycap to him. We'll see if you are a good salesman. We'll see if we can get the old boy wearing a safety helmet with a Waycap sensor. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us and being part of our panel. It's been just a wonderful time to hear about Waycap and the technologies that are providing solutions for the construction industry today. Well, ladies and gentlemen, those that have joined us, we really appreciate you taking the time. I know that you are all around the world, and so some of you are up late, some of you are up early, but we really appreciate you taking the time to hear what we have to offer. Well, thank you so much, and we do wish you a very good day. Take care.